Okay, if everybody could go ahead and take their seats, we'll get started here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the legislative session for October 8th to order. Let the record reflect that it's 5:32, and Commissioner Kearns and Commissioner French are present, and Commissioner Cooney is traveling on county business. So we'll start out with Pledge of Allegiance. So if all could stand if you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So if you have a phone or any other kind of device that's going to make any kind of noise, please turn it off or turn it on to vibrate. If you get a call during the session, please step out in the corridor or upstairs so that it doesn't interfere with other people that want to provide testimony or the proceedings for the evening. We'll start out with open public forum. This is an opportunity for folks in the community to take 3 minutes and share with us any concerns, topics, suggestions, whatever, on anything other than items that are on the agenda. Items that are on the agenda we'll take in the appropriate order, and you'll have an opportunity to speak at that time. First order of business is the open public forum. And I do have a number of folks that have signed up to speak at the public forum. If you want to provide any testimony at the public forum, please get one of the yellow sheets outside and fill it out. Make sure the clerk has it so that we can include you as part of the record. And so I'll take these in order. And my fellow commissioner, Mr. Kearns, is going to provide the 3-minute warning. So when that sounds off. If you haven't finished your comments, please do so in very short order. And we'll start with Mr. Frank. And I will tell you up front that sometimes I can read handwriting and sometimes I can't. So that if I mispronounce your name, it's not deliberate. It's just a failure to be able to accurately read your name. So Frank McGrew. Wow. Feel free to come up. Is the microphone on? Great.
Thank you. Thanks for hearing me today. I'm here just to show some support for Spokane County Raceway. I know that's not on the agenda today, but I've been out there since I was about 10 years old as a fan, the last 10 years as a racer. The last 3 or 4 years, I've been part of a volunteer public relations team. We've just been trying to improve everything out there as much as we can, the relationship with the community. One of my fellow team members has spoke here before, Angie Weaver. I believe she sent the commissioners a link to a page she started. It's up to about 1,240 or so members now in a short time. We're trying to put together some of the best of that, some of the memories and the impacts that has had and continues to have at the track out there. One of our members on that also started an online petition. It's not making any kind of demands or anything, just showing support and the positive impact that it's had. That was started October 3rd, Thursday. I believe, the second one to sign it at about 9 p.m., and that's already up to about 2,150 members, which probably doesn't sound like a lot if this was like to end world hunger, but for a small local track like that, that's pretty impressive in that short a time, less than a week. Almost 2,200 signs on that. That place has had a huge impact on a lot of us. There's only a few of us here today, but I'm here to represent those people that have sort of sent me as public relations. I've had a lot of contact with people from all over the Northwest who, when they found out the lease was coming due, they were, please let the county know that this means a lot to us. A large group from Western Washington, Oregon, a lot of folks from Canada, Montana, Idaho, all over the Northwest. It's a facility that you're just not going to find again. You don't find them around the United States. I talked to lots of people who travel here, and it was built very uniquely, and I just don't think it would ever happen again if it was gone. Economically, I don't have any statistics or anything. I just know what I know from knowing the people there, and it brings in a lot that you don't see. A lot of people come up here in the race world. It's their first time to Spokane. I've talked to probably 20 people just this year that came up, said, I've never been to Spokane before. They meet people here, make lifelong friends. They come back. A lot of people came back this summer for shows out at Northern Quest, and they come back for the shows downtown, things they didn't even know existed here, the lakes around here, and didn't know all the mountains for skiing. Several people come back in the winter, to ski from the coast and from Oregon. Socially, it has a huge impact too. You always hear about keeping the kids off the street and stuff, but it's a lot more than that too. Are we getting there? Okay. Just saying, there's a huge social impact from that place too. And thank you for hearing me.
Could you state your name and your address for the record, please?
Sure. Frank McGrew, and I live at 30395 Swanson Lake Road North in Creston, Washington. I was born and raised here, though. Lived here in Spokane County most of my life.
Thank you.
The next person I have signed up is Dave Crocker.
I'm a little shorter than Frank, so I got to adjust the mic here. Frank is one of my public relations members at Spokane County Raceway, and I just kind of want to start off by thanking the commissioners for hearing us today and for listening to the public concerning the racetrack. My name is Dave Crocker. I live in Clarkston, Washington. And it's a little bit of a drive for me to come to the racetrack. It's about a 2-hour drive each way, but I'm at every event. And I about 4 years ago, I talked to Craig Smith about some of the things that I thought that we could improve at the racetrack, and luckily he kind of took it on as a kind of a an idea to bring some of the people together, some input from the racers. And from the racing community to involve themselves in the racetrack, and that's when he started our public relations group. It's had a very positive impact on my life, and I know a lot of the lives of the racers. Frank McGrew, Angie Weaver, Randy Weaver. There's a bunch of us that have been part of this group for about 4 years, and I know that it's Craig, he handles the business part of things very well. However, the personal side of things, it's nice to have people that are a little more connected to the racers, and that's what we've been. We've been kind of the people in between the racers and the management. The PR team has kind of morphed into more of operations at the racetrack. We've been involved with staging lanes operations, tower operations, virtually every position at the racetrack we've covered. And, we've all done this on a voluntary basis. There's no, we haven't asked anything from Craig or the racers or anything other than just to try to make the track survive. The petition that Frank talked of, I just checked a little bit ago. It's at 2151 signatures on the petition, which is just support for the racetrack. And, it's been a great thing. I know Frank mentioned also about the Facebook page, the Spokane County Raceway, Spokane Raceway Park Memories page. It's really been fantastic seeing the outpouring of stories that people have regarding the racetrack since its inception in 1974. I mean, I can remember it personally. I was 4 years old my first time at the racetrack, and I have transcripts from my first grade when I was in school, just saying stories about the racetrack and just how awesome it was, and continues to be. it's really what kind of inspired me to be who I am today. And my job is I'm a journeyman machinist. I own a CNC machine shop in Clarkston, Washington, and I service the racing community. I manufacture and distribute parts nationwide, and Spokane has been a great proving ground for most of my products. I would also like to say, I realize that my time's coming short here, is that the racers are part of a racing family, and part of that family is just to get together and enjoy each other and enjoy life in general. And I'd like to leave an open invitation for all of the council members to come to our awards banquet that we're going to have November 9th at Players and Spectators that we'll be presenting. It starts at 6 p.m. Players and Spectators on East Sprague. So thank you all very much.
Great. Thank you, sir. Next person I have signed up is Donald Morris.
Yes, my name is Don Morris, and some of you might know who I am. At the time they auctioned off the course, or the racetrack, I was there bidding for the track with the county. And at that time, they had mentioned that they wouldn't bid against a private entity. And I had it actually bought twice. But the county just kept bidding, and anyway, didn't get it. But here, possibly, there was an opportunity maybe to operate the course with maybe an option to buy or maybe purchase the course. I don't know. But I have a person behind me that you might know the name, Jack Roush of Roush Racing. Jack was involved with me at the time the course was up for sale at the auction, and he still would like to do something if we can make it work. And with him behind this whole deal, you could bring some astronomical events to that site. It's good enough with some improvements to really bring road racing, drag strip, and the circle course track. You could bring. You've got the infrastructure now. You got enough motels to handle a big event, which 10 years ago there wasn't. But he's willing to go on board with me and possibly some other local investors if the course, we could look at whatever is available, and that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. You might have a conversation with the gentleman at the end of the counter here, Jerry Gemmel, about whatever interest you might have in the track. So next person I have is Dan Weaver.
My name is Dan Weaver. I'm a local Spokane resident for my whole life. My background business experience comes from the West Plains the last 30 years, where our family business has been in heavy fabrication. And I'm a former co-owner and now retired, so I have time to do things like hang around racetracks. I've been an automotive enthusiast since the 60s. Involved in a lot of different associations and car clubs, and I sent a little email to Jerry around the 17th, a kind of outline situation of different people that are groups in general that are what I call more like head of household situations. And some of those people are, of course, the car clubs, which are 50 to 70 strong in the area. There's a lot of repair shops, automotive shops of all kinds, car dealerships. Then we have individuals, younger people, high school groups. This thing fans and has a lot of tentacles, as you can see how fast people can sign up. I have availability of bringing letters from many businesses that are stating that they have a lot of support And it isn't that their entire businesses are associated to just that racetrack, but there are portions of it that are in their business. Many years ago, I was involved in automotive redistribution of parts, and I found out, and I really learned one thing. When you bring new business to Spokane, you bring people with it, and people spend money two ways. One of the ways is for basic necessities, including housing, overhead, et cetera, and the other major area is in recreation. And we have a recreation site at Spokane Raceway Park that is not available for many states around. And a couple of months ago, we had an activity out there where we filled up both sides of the stands. I don't know if you were there, but to see people paying $35 a seat and $10 to park, it's a pretty high number for the city of Spokane. That means we got some pretty hardcore enthusiasts. And there's a lot of opportunities I've been talking to people about for a lot of side ventures, including training situations, enacting daytime stuff. If there were individual meetings available for this thing coming up, we certainly could get a group of people together with a lot of ideas. I have also, Donna's a personal friend of mine that just spoke. I also have other financier people that are interested. So I want to thank you very much for your time, and hopefully we'll talk again.
Thank you, sir. Next person I have signed up is Laura Rentz. Hope I pronounced that right.
Hi. I just want to make sure scraps is in the 2020 budget.
Yes. it
Okay,
is.
okay.
Yep.
So I can speak on it?
Well, you can speak on it when we get to the budget. So do you want to just sit tight and then we can talk about it as part of the
Sure.
public safety?
Thank you.
Okay. We'll do it that way.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to provide any testimony at the open public forum? Second call for anybody providing testimony. Third and final call. We will have another open public forum at the end of the meeting, so if all of a sudden you're stuck by something that you just have to share with us, feel free to participate in the last public forum. So with that, that gets us into our hearing agenda. First item is item number 4. And this is a hearing in the matter of the vacation of a portion of the unnamed right-of-way, also known as parcels 45242.0109 and 45242.0115. And I think Mr. Coles, you're going to educate us here a little bit about this item.
Thank you, Commissioners. Chad Coles, County Engineer. That's a pretty catchy name for that roadway, isn't it? Grab this. So we have 2 items tonight. The first is the vacation hearing on, as you mentioned, whoops, got the wrong one there. All right, we'll do this one. On the unnamed portions, unnamed parcels out in the Spokane Valley. These 2 parcels are near the intersection of Sprague and Conklin along the old Milwaukee right-of-way. 2 parcels were dedicated as part of building permit applications or development applications years ago. We've reached out to the city of Spokane Valley. They're utilized right now as approaches to those two parcels. You see to the north, the orange parcels are the right-of-way. They're unconnected. They're used as access to the adjacent parcels. The city of Spokane Valley has no need for them as right-of-way. And I can see no future use as right-of-way for Spokane County. So I recommend that they be vacated.
Very good, thank you. So this is a hearing item, so I'll open up the hearing to anybody who wants to provide testimony on hearing item number 4. I do not, well, I have one person signed up. I'll get to Mr. Graffos. Anybody else want to provide any testimony on hearing item number 4? Mr. Graffos, why don't you come up to this microphone?
Thank you very much. My name is Dean Graffos, Spokane Valley, and I own those properties at the north of that those two parcels. And we started accumulating those properties in the 70s. And all through those years, we tried to work with we worked with the county and a number of people, and they're not even here anymore. Ray Moon, I'm sure you remember Ray. Pat Harper, we worked with him. Sherm Johnson. It's been 47 years that we've worked around those two parcels, and we really haven't been able to completely utilize those properties because of the restrictions of those parcels. And I'm just asking that maybe this is the time, with the Appleway corridor and everything all settled now, and we're not going to put a light rail system in there, that possibly the county would vacate those two parcels. Thank you.
So, third and final call, if anybody wants to provide testimony on hearing item number 4. See nobody coming forward, I'll close the hearing. Direction.
All right, Mr. Vice Chair, I move to accept the county engineer's recommendation in the matter of the vacation of a portion of unnamed right-of-way, also known as parcels 45242.0109 and 45242.0115.
I will second the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Then that brings us to hearing item number 5 in the matter of the vacation of a portion of Main Street in Meade, Washington, County Engineers Road File number 2083. Mr. Coles.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This section of road that's proposed to be vacated is up near the intersection of Market Street and Farwell Street in the southwest corner near the old Meade High School. This is in the area that's being developed by the Meade School District for their new school. There's a school off to the west and new facility off to the north there. I'm not quite sure exactly what they're doing with it up there, but they really would like us to vacate it. It's about 220 feet of the old Main Street right-of-way north of 4th Avenue, dead ends in the school property right now. Current use is just access to that property. I see no future plans to extend that road through the new construction that Meade's doing, and I recommend that it be vacated.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Coles? Okay, so I do not have anybody signed up for this, so if you'd like to provide any testimony on hearing item number 5, I'll open it up for anybody wanting to provide testimony. Second call for anybody wanting to provide testimony. Third and final call for anybody wanting to provide testimony on hearing item number 5. Seeing nobody, run to the podium, close the hearing, and look to my fellow commissioner.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move to accept the county engineer's recommendation in the matter of vacating a portion of Main Street in Meade, Washington, County Engineer Road File number 2083.
I'll second the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. That then brings us to our public roundtable hearing, and this is on the 2020 county services, or the 2020 budget. And we'll start off with a short presentation by our Chief Budget Officer and Ms. Tanya Wallace, and then we'll open it up to the public for anyone that wants to provide any testimony. Again, if you want to provide testimony, and I do have one sign-up sheet already, please fill out the sheet and give it to the clerk, and we'll provide opportunity for you to provide input. Again, this is a hearing. It's not a discussion. It's not a debate. We're here to try and hear any input that you might have as we work to shape the budget for next year and stuff. So if you have questions about the budget and stuff, you can present them. We'll have staff follow up with you later on. So with that, Ms. Wallace.
Thank you, Commissioner, audience. I did turn so that I could face all of you as I present. I'm really just going to give you a big overview, but then also put some context around public safety and justice and some of our services and our funding sources, because that is what we're going to spotlight tonight. And we do have 3 great presenters that are going to focus in a little bit more on some of those services. So this is our total preliminary 2020 budget. And you can see for the county, it amounts to about $754 million right now. And as Commissioner French stated, we are in the preliminary stages. We are working through a lot of details with this budget, but this is our total budget that we're looking at right now. Now, how does this compare against 2019? Well, it is about $36 million more than last year. And this is largely because last year, or I should say right now in 2019, we had a lot of capital projects that we are not anticipating going into 2020, and we also paid off some significant debt in our utility funds. This is our expenditure budget. I'm sorry, I reversed that, huh? This is the revenue side of it, and these are the services that we provide in total. And the county does provide a lot of services, not just to folks in the county, but to other jurisdictions, and you're going to hear a little bit about that tonight too. So when we look at just public safety, you can see here on the public safety side, not including some inter-fund transfers between detention and our scraps or animal protection services, it amounts to $128 million. A lot of services, and primarily it's focused on sheriff's services and detention services. And then when you look at the judicial services, it's $57 million. These two groups of services combined total about 30% of our entire budget. But it is what a lot of people pay attention to. So I'm not going to talk too much about these services. I'm going to really let these three departments present. We have Maggie Yates, who's our regional administrator for our Law and Justice Administration. And then we have Under Sheriff Knowles, who's going to present for the Sheriff's Office, and Director Sparber, who's going to present on detention services. We do provide a lot of other really great services under this umbrella, but tonight we're going to spotlight these three areas. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maggie Yates, and I'm going to get her up and going here.
All right, thank you, Tanya, and thank you to the board for the invitation, and thanks to all of you for being here. My name's Maggie Yates, as Tanya mentioned. I'm the Regional Law and Justice Administrator. I've been in this position for about a year, and I'm very excited for the opportunity to share about work that many of you who are here have been engaged in and supportive of. So I will walk through our scope of work, discuss some of our initiatives in more detail, and then just identify some of the priority areas for the upcoming year. So here you can see that our office is involved in a few different areas of work. All of it really focuses on improving outcomes across the criminal justice system. That means improving outcomes for individuals who are arrested and come into contact with the system, victims of crime in our community, making sure that our taxpayer dollars are invested in the most effective way possibly, and ensuring that our levels and experience of community safety are improving. This really manifests in three different buckets of work, as you can see behind me. We have the Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council. We have a couple of different grants that our office manages. And then we have additional ad hoc requests and projects that we support and help move forward. The funding for our work is regional. My position is a unique position that is regionally funded by both the city and county. And this really exemplifies the collaborative work that this charge really requires. It requires partnership across departments, with community, and across jurisdictions. So community engagement is a huge priority for us, and as is partnerships across the city, county, and in community. Our office is only 3 individuals, including myself, so it really requires a lot of relationship building and learning from experts across the system. So this is one area of the work that I've identified, the Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council. It is often thought of as the primary bulk of our work, but it's actually one of the smallest areas that we spend our time on. That does not mean that it's not one of the more important ones. The Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council was established several years ago as an advisory body. It's authorized by state law and is comprised of multiple stakeholders who are criminal justice experts or have some sort of insight or impact on the criminal justice system. It also importantly includes 4 community members, which is unique to our makeup locally. We meet monthly, and we also have a few different committees who also meet to make sure that we are sharing information, that we are providing guidance to stakeholders, and that we're being transparent and educating community members. The criminal justice system here, like everywhere, is gigantic and can be complex. And I've been in meetings at the SRLJC and in other contexts where we have experts from the sheriff's office educating judges and vice versa, because we don't know everything that's happening in real time. So it's incredibly important that we make space for this and also get feedback from each other and, again, the community. We also have 2 major grants that we manage through our office. The first, many of you are familiar with, which is the Safety and Justice Challenge that's funded by the MacArthur Foundation. So this grant is really devoted to increasing public safety, ensuring the proper use of our jail, increasing community collaboration, and addressing racial disparities across the criminal justice system. I think it's incredibly important to stress that this is an effort to safely reduce our jail population, safely ensure that we're properly using our jail. This means that our recidivism rates will decrease, which means improved public safety, fewer victims in the future. We were recently awarded a 3rd and final phase of this funding back in December 2019. The funding is set to expire in January 2020. It's important to stress, and I will continue to remind our Board of County Commissioners that this is our final phase. We have to decide which of these initiatives we want to continue to invest in as a county and as a community. I'm going to just highlight some of the strategies that we're currently funding through this grant and also some of the areas of priority moving forward. Number 1 is case processing, looking at how cases move through the system from arrest to adjudication. And we have, fortunately, support from technical assistance providers at the National Center for State Courts. They've already issued recommendations to Superior Court, which is implementing several of those recommendations. And now they're working with municipal and district courts to go through the same process, making sure that cases are moving efficiently without undermining the rights of those who are facing charges. Another issue with case processing are failure to appear rates. This means individuals who might have a court date set fail to appear for court for several reasons. We, through funding with the Safety and Justice Challenge, set up a court date reminder system at our county public defender's office. We know from national research that court date reminders increase appearance rates anywhere from 30 to 50%. And this makes sense. I get multiple reminders for my dentist appointments and doctor's appointments, and this is just one more tool that we can use to make sure folks are showing up to court, getting their cases resolved. Another significant project that is supported by this grant is our pretrial services officers. We fund 6 full-time pretrial services officers with MacArthur funding. They're responsible for interviewing everyone who's booked into the jail, screening them with a risk tool, and monitoring folks who are released pretrial. Currently, we have about 470 people who are being monitored by pretrial services officers in the community. That means they're not in our jail and not a burden on those who are running our jail and a cost to the taxpayer. It's also critically important because these interviews and risk tools are shared with the court and with the parties. So it informs the arguments and the decisions about pretrial release, bond, and other relevant decisions. And so they're the people who are getting that information to the folks who are going to make the decision and arguments that are related to it. Pretrial also recently added with our recent round of funding a clinician. And this is a new pilot program that's really exciting. This clinician, she's a licensed social worker, screens individuals in partnership with a pretrial services officer. They identify folks who are held on low bonds, so potentially people who just cannot afford to post the bond. She looks at those low bonds and then cross-references them for behavioral health issues. If folks are interested in voluntary treatment, then she'll come up with a treatment plan, get them an inpatient bed date if that's appropriate, connect them with other resources, and then bring this back up to the court to make sure that the court has the information and can release if appropriate. Again, this means fewer days in jail, but more importantly, getting them connected to treatment that we know is going to stabilize them and make all of us safer in the community. This just started in around September, and since at the end of this September, there were already 8 individuals who had successfully been connected to treatment and had their cases resolved. Now, it's not a diversion program, so that was just a sort of byproduct or coincidence. But these 8 individuals, 4 of them were facing drug charges that we know averages roughly 26 days in jail. So they saved, this program saved at least 51 days for just 4 individuals and resulted in a cost savings of roughly $7,000. Moving quickly forward, the data dashboard, data transparency and analysis has been a huge challenge and also of a huge interest across the system and in our community. So with this recent grant funding, we hired a data analyst. She started in May, and we're working on building out a criminal justice database where we can standardize reporting and make sure we're sharing that publicly. So that is in the works, and it is a significant project that will require ongoing staffing and licenses for dashboards. But we are very excited to get that up and running. We also, as I've mentioned, have a new risk tool, the public safety assessment, and that implementation was funded by the Safety and Justice Challenge. It's been up and running since April of this year, and we meet on a quarterly basis to review the results that we're seeing and make sure that it is being implemented in an effective manner. We also have set aside money for implicit bias trainings, and we're working with community members to get those up and running. And then finally, we have a community engagement grant that was funded by the Safety and Justice Challenge that is going to develop a peer navigator training program for individuals who are coming home from jail. This means that they will get a certification as a peer navigator, which will then be a marketable skill for them and help stabilize them in the community. This is particularly unique because it was community-led. The county and city really supported a group of community members drafting this and getting it funded. I do want to share just an example of what a dashboard could look like. This is just a screenshot of one dashboard that jurisdiction in the Safety and Justice Network has developed in Allegheny County in Pennsylvania. So this shows bail decisions and just gives a little bit of context to what we're trying to build out. The second grant that we have is a reentry grant, and the reentry grant is funded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and it's in partnership with Better Health Together, SNAP, and community-minded enterprises. So you can see there it's just under $1 million, but Better Health Together has been incredibly generous, investing additional funds to make sure that we are meaningfully addressing the needs of individuals who are referred into this program. It's going to be funded through 2021. September of 2021. And individuals who are eligible for the program are connected with the community health worker, which functions much like a peer navigator, while they're still incarcerated. They develop a reentry plan, and then the community health worker helps them meet their needs once they're back in the community. Detention Services has been a huge partner in this endeavor, and we're still working to make sure that our referral process is efficient and that we're catching everyone who may be interested or in need of services. So this is something to keep an eye on through 2021, and we'll be continuing to make sure that the referral program and the services being provided are meaningful. In addition to the grant funding, we have several other locally funded initiatives. You can see a few of them behind me. There are many more. The significant one for immediate purposes is the Justice Task Force. This is an effort to study issues related to our current jail facility and our current population, so we can make recommendations to our Board of County Commissioners regarding whether or not we need a new jail facility and what that looks like. I understand that this is one of several commissions that have been convened to look at these issues, and we're really excited to finalize those recommendations and help support. There we go. Saw the cue in the audience. So we're excited to make sure that they're actually supported and that we are able to get them before the commissioners with the appropriate research. I would estimate that between our last task force meeting back in August, we have poured about 200 hours into additional subcommittee meetings, research, and preparation. We'll have another task force meeting October 28th, just putting a plug out, and so we'll look at additional data and additional recommendations. The Mental Health Crisis Stabilization Facility is an ongoing project that is being developed, again, cross-departmentally, and that we're supporting. We sit on the project team, and that is an opportunity for law enforcement to take folks to treatment rather than to jail when appropriate. You heard me mention the court date reminders with our county public defender. We're also working to implement court date reminders directly at booking. We know that a lot of people are brought by law enforcement to the jail, booked and released quickly. That means that they're not yet caught in the public defender's court date reminder system. So by implementing it at booking, again with the support of detention services, we will be able to catch a larger population of individuals who come into contact with our court system, and again, give them an additional reminder to attend court. Finally, our Board of County Commissioners recently voted to reauthorize the Criminal Justice Commission to provide a status report for the Blueprint for Reforms. Many of you are familiar that this was a document published back in 2013, identifying several areas where we can improve our criminal justice system. We've made progress in several of those areas. We've made progress in areas that weren't even identified, and then there, of course, is always still room for improvement. So the CJC is starting to do that work, and we're looking forward to getting the feedback and direction and additional information to inform our next steps. So finally, just wrapping up, I just wanted to share some of the priority areas that we have for next year. Again, I have to stress that we are coming to an expiration date of one of our major grants, and it is a time for us to, again, reevaluate our progress, how effective and impactful those initiatives were, and then decide how we want to continue investing in those projects. This, again, includes our pretrial services office and our data analyst and our clinician in the pretrial services office. We also, through next year, will finalize and begin implementing the priority recommendations issued by the Justice Task Force related to the jail discussion, and that those recommendations would be approved by the Board of County Commissioners prior to implementation. Again, as I mentioned, there's some level of fatigue and concern about our jail population, so we need to make sure that we do get those areas identified and that we prioritize and pursue investment in those recommendations. Third, we will start to address the recommendations and feedback that we get back from the Criminal Justice Commission related to the Blueprint for Reform. And then finally, we'll continue to refine our reentry pilot, making sure that the referral process is effective. That was a challenging project because we operate in silos, as we all know, and so it took some time to figure out how we could collaborate across silos, and I'm really heartened by the progress that we're making and excited to see how we can expand that in the reentry project and all of the projects that will arise moving forward. If anyone has questions in the community or from the board, I'm happy to answer them via email or by phone. I unfortunately didn't put my contact information on the slide deck, but I'm easy to be found in the audience here or online. Thanks very much for your time. Did a bad job at the slideshow. Next time I won't put animations in. Thanks again for your time.
Okay, Under Sheriff Knowles.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the members of the public and the other department heads from the county coming and listening to this presentation. It's important that you're involved with government and that you understand where we're spending our valuable tax dollars. Also, thank you to the board for letting us come in and talk to you about our budget for this next year. Well, I don't think I clicked anything, did I? Okay, we're there. Okay. So for the 2020 budget, we'll start off by talking about the mission of the Sheriff's Office. And while it's obvious to most people what law enforcement does, what I want to point out about the Sheriff's Office is one of our main focuses is the safety of our community. You know, it says so in our mission statement that we want to deliver quality services and we want the public that we serve to feel safe. And to do that, we have to work with the public in tandem through developing information and hearing what your concerns are. We feel like we're very in touch with the public and what they need. And again, we're open to any comments about anything that we present in the budget. And if you have any questions, feel free to talk to myself afterwards or contact us outside of this meeting. So with that idea in mind, that public safety and the way the public feels about that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about what comprises the majority of our budget today in the Sheriff's Office. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to have our Director of Business Operations, Chris Weiss, come up and talk a little bit about the different components of the budget and how the numbers break out. And then I'll come back after that and talk a little bit about some of the projects and initiatives we have in store for 2020. Chris.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, members of the board and the audience. My name is Chris Weiss, and this is a very exciting time for us right now because, at least with the Sheriff's Office, we've been working on this budget for about 6 months. And so now getting an opportunity to present it to you means that everything is congealing, getting together, and so we'll be able to move on finally. And I want to also thank Tanya's staff. She has implemented a number of changes and processes within the budget this year. It's worked out fantastic. I love the increased communication that it's fostered. So I just want to say thank you very much on that. Before starting out with the budget of the Sheriff's Office, I kind of wanted to start with this slide because it kind of puts the Sheriff's Office budget in context with the general fund. And it's just a good starting point in terms of recognizing the size of the Sheriff's Office. So 22% of the expenses of the general fund. And then to look at it a little bit differently, Maggie touched on it a little bit earlier. When we're talking about law and justice, just how much of it is encompassed the general fund itself, 68%. Then you see the 22% there. However, when we start looking at the individual departments that are contained within the Sheriff's Office that represent those expenditures of the $45 million, when we look at the revenue from the contracting jurisdictions that the Sheriff's Office provides to the different cities and jurisdictions within the county, we offset that. Really, the impact on the general fund is about 9%, and that represents the services being provided to the unincorporated. So this is another way to look at basically of the 45 million, more than half, about 51% of that is really focusing on providing a service within the community, within the county, to multiple jurisdictions, cities. Now, if we break out the expenses a little bit differently here, again, this is the Sheriff's Office expenses. This is a labor burden that you're typically going to see on in this industry that is focused on human involvement. So anywhere from 85 to 90% is what you're going to see on a labor, and ours is 88%. And then you'll see the supplies, services, contracts makes up about 9%, and then capital is very small, it's 3%. That's where we fund our fleet from. So I didn't want to get into all the details of the changes from 19 to 20, but the bulk of them was correctly funding the overtime. This doesn't mean that we're spending an additional $800,000 in overtime. Quite the opposite, actually. What we are going to be doing this year in 20 is we're reducing our overtime. That's our plan. But in prior years, it wasn't properly funded within the budget. And so all this does is recognize that there is that this is now a mechanism for showing that. We had an opportunity to change the leadership a bit within our SWAT unit. And whenever we do that, we always get a different set of eyes looking at something. And you don't know something's broke or something that could be improved upon until somebody else takes a look at it with a different view. And we had that this year with a leadership change within our SWAT. We found out that some of our equipment was obsolete. We shouldn't have been using it at all. It wouldn't have served us very well. And so we got to thinking and we got to discussing this. We should have all of our equipment, and this one specifically, we should be looking at the asset life, the expected useful life, and then we should be budgeting for it accordingly. So that's what we did, and that was one of the highlights that we did with the 20 budget. And then we had an additional $30,000 funding toward recruiting. Recruiting has been very difficult for us in the past few years. We were constantly doing a 360 analysis on ourselves, on our training department, on the staff, where we were focusing those energies, and then the timeline that it was taking to bring an individual on board from a new hire position. Because I'm not sure if most of you know, but it takes about a year to train an individual before they're in their own car. And up until that point, whether they're with an FTO or they're in a basic law enforcement academy or the pre-academy, because we're at minimum staffings, those individuals are incurring overtime. So with that said, I believe this, did you want to take the next step? So we're going to go back and forth here. It keeps the audience engaged. You guys are, and you guys don't fall asleep.
So as some of you may be able to surmise from what we're talking about, one of the biggest challenges that not just the sheriff's office faces right now, but really all law enforcement across the country is hiring and retaining officers and deputies. Again, this is not a problem unique to the sheriff's office, and in fact, even though our shortage of people and our inability to hire enough qualified people is substantial to us, it really does pale in comparison to a lot of different regions. And a lot of that is due to the fact of the reputation we have as an agency, the reputation that Spokane County has as an employer. We really do have a good reputation in our community and in our surrounding areas about being an employer where you're appreciated for hard work, that we support our employees, and that really does transfer down to the sheriff's office as well. They are very impressed with the integrity that we show, and it's really helped our recruiting efforts, even though we need more people, right? So there's a pretty busy graphic behind us. As you can see, the numbers in red show the number of people, right? This number, this chart works from right to left, kind of backwards how you'd want it to. But the number down the bottom is the age of the deputy, and it works, you know, obviously from older to younger as you go left to right. Everybody in red is at retirement age. And as you can see, we have 37 deputies eligible to retire today in the sheriff's office, and starting next year, we're going to add 6 more people to it, and the year after that, we'll add another 9, and that number just keeps compounding every year. We have really struggled to get out in front of our hiring issues. However, I have to tip my hat to the county commissioners because they have allowed us to fund what we're calling additional pool positions. Last year it was given to us through supplemental funds. We're hoping this year that it's given to us in full-time funds continuing, and that will allow us to hire people in advance of the people going out the door that next year. Chris talked a little bit about the time lag that there is from the time we hire somebody to the time that they can actually go out and do police work, and it averages anywhere from 9 to 12 months. Well, that's significant. One of the things that we can point out is today we actually only have 4 unfilled positions in the sheriff's office today, but yet I have 28% of my positions that I can fill in patrol that are currently vacant, which means there's 28% of the people that aren't out there responding to calls. So even though we've hired them, they're not the one, there's nobody out there, or there's 28% fewer people knocking on your door to help resolve your problem or take your reports or things like that. So that's where that lag comes in. And while it looks like staffing wise we're in really good shape, for a little while with that lag, we really have a hard time producing the results that we would like. So again, because we're having those positions funded, we're able to get out in front of that hiring lag a little bit, and hopefully this year we will have all 14 people in place before we have 13 people that we know are retiring in 2020 go out the door. So we'll be able to keep a consistent number of boots on the ground performing work. So it's important to show that to the public so they understand. And as Chris alluded to earlier, when those 28% of those positions aren't filled, I have to have somebody out in a patrol car to go out and take reports and respond to calls. That incurs overtime. And it gets really expensive, and that's really not a good way to conduct business. It gets very, very expensive. Not only is it financially difficult for the sheriff's office and for the county, but it really wears out our people. Our people work 12-hour shifts. We have some people who are getting pretty burned out, right? 12-hour shifts, you do 5 or 6 of those in a row, you get pretty exhausted. So that's why it's such an important problem to discuss here. And again, I think with the help of the county commissioners, we're able to start addressing this problem effectively in ways that we haven't been able to do in the past. So thank you for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the supplemental items we've requested for 2020 and explain a little bit about why we've requested them. There's a pretty expensive software request up there that works in our forensics department. Most people, you may or may not be aware that our forensics department, forensics unit, they're a unit that serves all of the law enforcement entities in the county of Spokane. So it's the city of Spokane uses our forensics unit, the sheriff's office uses a forensics unit, and then if they're requested by other jurisdictions, and obviously our contract cities, they utilize them as well. There's a tremendous amount of data and information that is being processed by that unit, and believe it or not, until right now, everything has been on paper. It's 2019, and the amount of paperwork that they produce is it's incredible. So one of the requests we have is to bring them into this century and get them up to date with some paperless information management systems. We've requested $25,000 to bring in a group from Washington State University to help the sheriff's office with their strategic planning. That's an area where we believe we can improve. We believe it will help us be a little more fiscally responsible. We do understand that there are some gaps in the way we operate, and we think this is a way for us to be better stewards of our taxpayer dollars. And again, it'll allow us to involve the other people who touch the sheriff's office, the budget office, the city of Spokane Valley, their leadership. They all need to be involved in that process. So we make sure we're delivering a fantastic product. We have requested an additional $50,000 for basic law enforcement new hires. We don't get to train them for free. We are hiring on average of 30 deputies a year. We have an authorized 242 commission members right now. And I believe in the last 6 years, we've hired well over 100 new deputies. So that should give you some idea of the turnover that we're dealing with, the amount of training that it requires, and the number of people we're bringing in the door. Our training unit has done a fantastic job, and they are fighting a huge tidal wave of people leaving for retirement and things like that. So there is $108,000 that we've requested for replacing a bomb robot. Something that's important, I think, for the public to know. We think that that's fancy, but the total cost of the bomb robot is over $400,000. We are sharing the cost between ourselves and the city of Spokane, who uses the bomb robot as well. We've also received several $100,000 in grant funding to pay for part of that. The $108,000 is simply what the county's obligation would be if it's approved. One thing I'd like to point out, the SWAT teams for both agencies use that bomb robot very frequently. Believe it or not, gone are the days when we're willing to send people in heavy armor down the stairs to confront armed people or people we think might be armed. Technology has allowed us now to use robots to do that stuff. And the reality of it is, if somebody's going to have a sledgehammer and take it to somebody, we'd rather have them take it to a bomb robot than a person. If they're going to shoot at something, we'd rather have them shoot at a robot than at a person. So these robots are used frequently. And they are damaged by people that we confront. And while it is reasonably expensive to repair them, it's a lot easier to repair a robot than it is to repair people. So it's a very important piece of equipment for us. Let's talk a little bit about $142,000 for remodeling a real-time crime center. You've heard the sheriff talk about intelligence-led policing for many, many years. And there's a lot of different facets to intelligence-led policing. The primary purpose of utilizing this method of investigating crimes is that we're going to take the information that the public has, right? We acknowledge that the public has the most information about the crime that's going on in their neighborhoods. Take that information, collate it through analysis and other methods, and then direct our resources to the most appropriate places so we can get the better bang for our buck, right? We know that 80% of our crime is committed by 20% of the people, right? So we're going to focus our efforts on those people who are committing that 80% of the crime, right? It's a method of efficiency. So the next iteration of intelligence-led policing for the sheriff's office is building a real-time crime center. There are several areas across the country who utilize them. I've had the opportunity to tour New York City's, and while we cannot be anywhere near as ambitious as New York City's, they have a $4 billion budget for their police department. We don't have anywhere near that. We think there are things that we can implement that will allow us to respond more intelligently to crime as it's occurring, where we can have analysts who are processing information real time as calls come in and direct our resources to the right and appropriate places. And again, this is all aimed at becoming more efficient at fighting crime. And this project would basically be remodeling a part of the main floor of the public safety building and bringing in the technology that will allow us to kind of move into this next phase of intelligence-led policing. And then the last item, which is a very, very big number, $1.2 million for fleet. And again, I do have to tip my hat to the county commissioners and to the elected officials in the city of Spokane Valley. For a long time, I've been with the sheriff's office for 22 years, and it hasn't been except for about the last 4 where we felt that we were starting to get the financial support to build out a fleet that that was really, really usable for the sheriff's office. Last year, we were given a one-time funding of we were given funding of about $1.2 million for our fleet, and honestly, that was at least double what we had seen in previous years. Our fleet. I'm going to go to the next slide here. We have about 234 vehicles in the sheriff's office. And I don't want anybody in the public to get the idea that we're all driving brand new cars because we're not. I'll give you one statistic that will kind of paint a picture of where our fleet is at today. Ford stopped making the 4-door Crown Victoria sedan back in 2011, right? And we drive these cars every day, right? And police officers are not easy on cars. I mean, there's a reason that we call things deputy proof or not deputy proof. We're hard on things. So 9 years ago, they stopped making Crown Victorias. We still have 42 of them in our fleet today. Some of them are pretty beat up. They're in pretty tough shape. But the now support that we're getting from the Board of County Commissioners has recognized what that means to our fleet, and we're actually developed a plan that's going to help us get on top of our fleet issues to where we aren't taking cars into the garage and hoping that they'll make it through the next day. Anecdotally, I can give you a story about a call this weekend where one of our deputies who was responding to a serious call out in the county, she was driving down I-90 in her car, and her car stalled and shut off on I-90 trying to get to the call. And she wasn't sure she was going to make it there. Luckily, she drifted to the side of the road. She knew that if she put it in park, waited a few seconds, it would start again. And she was able to get to the call on time after a few of her partners passed her. That's really tough in emergency situations, and that it ended up being a critical incident that I'm sure you're all aware of this weekend. But those are the kinds of issues that we have to address with our fleet, and they're very real. But again, with what the proposed budget is this year, and if we're able to get on top of our budget with an additional request, we know we can get our fleet to where it's very, very functional, and we can get to those calls appropriately. Again, Sheriff Knezovich couldn't be here this evening, but he does, from the very bottom of his heart, want to know he appreciates you for coming out and for supporting the Sheriff's Office. We enjoy great public support, and every day we strive to earn that trust that you give us. And again, we want to thank the Commission for supporting the Sheriff's Office. You guys do a great job, and through the Budget Office and Tanya, we've enjoyed working with you, and this budget process has been actually pleasant. So, and again, if you have any questions for us, let us know. Thank you.
Of course, the definition of pleasant from a sheriff is, no, I'm just kidding. Thank you. Thank you, Nils.
Okay, we certainly wish we could spotlight all departments, but as you can see, when they give great information, we can only spotlight a few. So our last spotlight department is from Director Sparber with Detention Services.
Thank you. I'll let you go first. So thank you for letting me be up here. I appreciate it. Board of County Commissioners for this opportunity, and also for you folks dedicating a portion of your night to come down to listen to this presentation and some of this. My name is Mike Sparber. I'm the Director of Detention Services. And then I also brought along with me Bryce Miller, who is the Finance Director for Detention Services, who's going to cover some of the financial aspects of it. So a little bit of history about Detention Services. We have two facilities. One is located downtown here on the campus, and it has roughly around 700 offenders presently in it. We also have a facility out in the West Plains, uses our Community Correction Center and our Program Center, and it has roughly about 326 or 27 inmates out there at the present time. Tonight we're going to cover some of the services that we provide for the offenders within detention services, along with some of the programs that go along with it. We hope to, give them an opportunity to take part of some of those programs, not only downtown, but also out in the West Plains at any opportunity that we can. We're going to talk about some of the things that some of our financial structure that we have, and how we responsibly are utilizing the taxpayers' money. And then we're going to look at the 2020, what our future holds for us, and some of the exciting projects and processes that we're going through, along with some of the things that Maggie Yates had talked about, and also with the Undersheriff had talked about moving forward with some of these initiatives. So let's get started. So this is our mission statement. I think if we look at our mission statement, really the key words that stand out on this are managing safe, secure, and humane. That's going to be our focus moving forward in 2020. We're going to take a really good look at our conditions of confinement, how we're managing the inmates on the inside, and try to do our best to make sure that we're giving them every opportunity to make connection with their families and be involved with their experience in jail isn't the problem per se. They need to have enough problems on their plates. They have enough things that they're going through. We'd like to provide services that kind of alleviate some of those issues if we can moving forward. And we're going to do that by talking about some of the things that are as we move forward here. If you think about detention services, it's basically our responsibility to replicate what they had at home. The jail is basically a mini city. And so all of those things and these services that we provide here are services that we provided on the inside. A lot of staff time, a lot of stuff, work that goes into these things to make these programs worthwhile, and to do our very best to make sure that all of these, not only the laws are followed, but also some of these services are provided as well. And if you think about even for our detention services food service, we prepare over 1 million meals a year. That's a lot of meals. And we take care of not only the downtown facility, but we also take care of juvenile and the West Plains out at Geiger. Some of the programs that we have, and I promised that I would do this justice. So, on the reentry side, we look at some of the partnerships that we have with the local organizations such as SNAP, and so we do a lot of programming in the way of IOP, which is our drug and alcohol program. We have a Breaking Barriers reentry program that we've had several successful graduations from, and the recidivism rate on that program has been very successful. We have an educational program where we have a GED program along with the local colleges come out. And I got to scoot forward. I'm sorry. Along with the local colleges that come out and provide some educational services for us. We rely heavily on some of the faith-based programs who are heavily involved with not only the downtown facility, but also the Geiger facility as well. So we do have home monitoring, electric home monitoring on a small scale. We don't have a large scale amount of folks out on that right now. And those are generally dictated by whether or not the judge would allow them to be out at EHM. It's not something that we decide to do. It's provided to us from the courts. Along with that, we do have a work crew program, and you've probably seen a lot of the work crews out there. They help with Bloomsday, they help with the fair, they also help with Hoop Fest and some of those. So very successful program for our work crews. Our ADP averages around, always averages around in the 900s. And it's been that way for quite a while. It fluctuates, it goes up. Our admissions have been about 25,000 a year for as long as I can remember. It goes up, like I said, a little bit and down a little bit, and our releases keep pace with our admissions. So our jail kind of stays stagnant, this population is going. We do anticipate that we're going to have a drop at the end of this year. Right now, the ADP is for 2019 is at 970. So, and we're anticipating a fewer amount of beds in the neighborhood of about 4,429 bed days, which is not a huge drop, but it's a drop. And we've been working with a lot of the initiatives that Maggie has been working on and trying to do our best to figure out who's coming into the jail, how do we best handle them, and some of the initiatives that go along with that. We've also made some progress in our shuttle system, how we're handling inmates from other counties and some of the shuttling things that are going on along with that. So I'm going to borrow a page from the undersheriff's book, and I'm going to turn it over to our finance manager to cover some of the financial aspects.
Move this up a little bit. So as Director Sparber said, I'm Bryce Miller. I'm the finance manager for detention services. So we're going to go through just a quick summary of what our budget looks like for 2020. So our preliminary budget for right now, we're sitting at $50.3 million excluding capital, because capital is still a process that's ongoing through every department in the county right now. If you see there, we have about 2/3 of our entire budget is based on salary and benefits. Taken back to the sheriff's office, it's a big chunk of our budget is manpower, because we're dealing with people and we have many, many people that have to take care of them. Next slide. So this is a slide talking about kind of where we're different between 2020 and 2019. Same format, salary and benefits. This time we've broken out overtime, so you can see it. We've historically been underfunded for our budget in overtime. Last year was the first year that we kind of made a move towards fully funding it. We didn't do it all in one fell swoop. We kind of hovered around $2 million historically for our overtime budget. So we added about $600,000 last year, and we're going to take the remaining $500,000 this year in 2020 to be fully funded for our overtime. If you look at our 5-year average, it's right at that $3.1 million per year. And again, as we hire, we're hoping to drive that number down, but while we're understaffed, the positions can't be vacant, so a body has to be there. We pay overtime to fill that spot. All right. So our 2020 funding, under our current methodology and our current contracts with our advisory board agencies, we take our operating budget, we reduce by any miscellaneous revenue that we receive during the year, which includes federal programs, work crew rate fees that we get for having our work crew go out and work, EHM transport, meals that we make for juvenile they pay for, and then included in there also is our mental health sales tax. I believe Tanya talked about that just briefly. So that's all the miscellaneous revenue. We take that as a net budget expense, and then we add a fund balance contribution from all the agencies that participate as advisory board members, and that's what gets allocated out. On the right here, you can see that we have our actual usage, which is our ADP, is average daily population, and that's how it breaks down for our top 3 advisory board members. And then there's 4 other members there that comprise that other agencies. It's a small, less than 1% portion. So that 45 million down here at the bottom gets allocated out based on those percentages. Here's a little pie graph showing how it all breaks down. So we get our Spokane County General Fund pays about 76% of our overall expenses. And again, you see your 9%, 10% miscellaneous revenue here. We get that, and it breaks down. So on the previous slide, I'll hop back here. So you see 75.91% is general fund. If you hop back here, the county's actual usage there is about 85%. But when you take into the account that $5.4 million in miscellaneous revenue, it drops all those down a little bit. So it kind of looks funny, but that's how the math all works out on that.
So on your previous chart,
Yes.
sorry for interrupting,
No, it's
but
okay.
on the previous chart where you're showing that Spokane County General Fund is paying for about 85% of the average daily population, that if somebody's inside the city gets arrested on a felony charge, then that's actually counted as a Spokane County charge, not a City of Spokane charge. So what I wanted to make sure that the audience understood is that that number doesn't reflect where you're arrested at or the crime you're arrested, well, it reflects more the crime you're arrested for and not where you're arrested at.
Yes, that is correct. State law says that any felony is charged back to the county, not where it actually took place.
Great.
So it drives that rate right up.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you. So I'm going to actually hand it back over to Director Sparber to talk about 2020 upcoming items.
I think your slides went faster.
Nobody wants
No one wants to hear whine. Okay. Okay, so we'll talk now about what we're looking towards for 2020. One of the things that I met with the board early on about was our contract with the Department of Corrections. This population continues to be a problematic population for detention services, and their average rate of pay is $85, which doesn't come close to the actual amount. In fact, in 2017, the difference came out to about $155,000 in difference between actual cost and the amount of money that they had paid us. In 2018, it was $229,770. And then on target now until the end of this contract is going to be another almost $300,000 in difference between their actual amount that they pay and the amount that the county ends up subsidizing on the other end of it. So one of the things that we have moving forward with at the direction and approval of the board is giving notice to the DOC that we either want a more equitable contract or something that works best for us and is best for public safety, and then moving forward with that. So we hope to hear from our DOC partners here pretty soon on some of those. We also, I don't think it's escaped anyone's notice that we've had a lot of illegal drugs get into the jail. It's generally secreted inside the body of one of the offenders, and it makes its way up to the floors and gets distributed out to numerous folks while they're up there. Following suit with a lot of agencies in the state of Washington, we're going to purchase, with the approval of the Board of County Commissioners, 2 body scanners, a body scanner for downtown, one for that will be located at the Geiger facility. And then a secondary problem that we have is a lot of drugs being secreted through mail, and the way that they do it is they put it in a seam. They pour all of the paper, and the offenders break up pieces of the paper and eat the paper to get a high off of that. A lot of times they'll steal legal envelopes from some of the legal offices and send it in as legal mail. So they're all problematic. We search all of the parcels that are coming in along with the letters that come in. And we still are not catching all of it. So one of the things that we had asked for along in this package is to have a mail scanner, which actually scans the mail. And then on a side note, Yakima actually has one of these scanners, and their incoming mail dropped by 70%. So I think the word is getting out to everybody that it may not work the same way that it used to, before. So along with those three big issues, we've increased a canine searching up on the floors, more frequent rounds, and searching of the cells. So we're trying to do it on multiple levels to attack the problem as we move forward with it. We also had a breach of security within the jail in the front lobby. It reminded us very quickly that we don't have the appropriate level of security out in our public lobby. So working with the CEO and with risk management, we were able to move over one of the security folks over to the detention services to start going through the security process in there. It's working very well. We've obtained a lot of things that couldn't have made its way into the jail. It has been an inconvenience for some of our partners, but we're trying to do our best to make it as minimal as possible. We've actually launched 2 big projects. One is the jail booking project, and that's a way to look at our booking area. Our booking area was designed to handle about 7,000 bookings annually, and as I expressed earlier, we're handling about 25,000, and that's not including the shuttles and some of the other things that are on top of that. Our booking area is tremendously small, and we're looking at ways through a project manager to maybe expand out into our Sally Port and then move some of the other functions outside of the building to see if we can gain some necessary space to help do our job more effectively in the booking area. Akin to that, and I talked to on the mission statement, which is on the safe and humane handling of our offenders. Our jail was designed to be a direct supervision jail when it was first built in 1986. The floors are laid out to be a 1 officer to 46 inmates for the supervision to occur. It allows for the officers to roam through the floor. It allows for the offenders to be out. It allows for baseline behaviors to be established, and some of those things that are necessary for the officers to do their job effectively up on the floors. So we have launched a project through a separate project manager to try to return our jail back to direct supervision, and we're working on several initiatives that are going along with that as well. We're also working with Tanya Wallace and an independent consultant on ways that we can handle our housing contracts and a methodology that we use for billing other agencies. Still in preliminary stages, but we're working through some of those details right now, and as they become more visible, then we'd love to share those things with them. And then, on a more cheery note, moving forward, all of the union contracts are due for detention services this year. So we'll be heavily involved with some of the negotiations that go along with the bargaining units within detention services. So that is what I have, and thank you. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to be here.
So audience, commissioners, that kind of concludes our presentations and our spotlights for tonight on public safety and justice services for the 2020 preliminary process that we're going through. We thank all of you for coming out tonight and listening to these folks talk a little bit about their services and giving you some financial context around what they do. And so from here, commissioners, I will turn the floor over to you.
So we are taking testimony at all of our presentations. We want to hear your feedback on the different items presented. We do have Laura Rintz, who is here, and this would be the appropriate time to provide testimony. And if there's anybody else in the audience who'd like to provide any comment on the presentation tonight, please fill out one of the yellow slips, and we'll invite you forward to share your thoughts with us. And welcome, and thank you for your patience.
I woke her up. Hi, I'm Laura Renz. Thank you for having me. I am with an organization called Northwest Service Dog Alliance. I'm also with a couple of other organizations in town that work with disability tasks. But I'd like to talk about Scraps since it's on the budget. Scraps is a really wonderful shelter, and they do great with placement with dogs and cats, and I can't say enough good things about that. but they're also the enforcement agency for dogs and dangerous dogs and RCWs in the city and the county, and they are not doing their job on that. So I wanted to address a few things because this is the right place to do it. Scraps puts out this brochure. They tell you right on here that they are the enforcing agency for citations and violations of the law, educating, assisting other law enforcement agencies. It's not the police's job to issue certain citations unless it's criminal. And quite honestly, the police have a lot more important things to do than chase after animal things. But let me get to a couple of important points here. I'm a service dog handler, so everywhere I go, my dog goes. Guide dog handlers are blind. They have guide dogs with them at all times. That's how they navigate the world. I navigate with a service dog. It's not a lot of fun. So that being said, there is no enforcement right now on dangerous dogs, on any RCWs. I have 4 with me. I just pulled 4. There's, I think, 6. There's also 2 city ordinances that Scraps and Scraps alone is in charge of enforcing. They have been lax and non-compliant on the majority of complaints on all calls, even when the death of a dog has resulted. There was a death of a dog just recently, last week. While the Scraps officer was on that call, investigating, while the dog was dead, the dog that did that came out of the person's house and bit 2 more people. Do you know where that dog is right now? It's still with the owner. Right in Scraps' thing right here, it says, any domestic animal that bites or otherwise breaks the skin of any person must be isolated and quarantined for 10 days. So I'm going to leave that right there. We can talk more about that later. Just service dogs alone are protected by 4 laws, RCWs, and 2 more in the city. There's one called Layla's Law that protects us a lot. It's called interference. They won't do anything. I was accosted by a dog in a bar, a restaurant, a few years ago, and Scraps blew it off. They said, well, we looked at the dog and we think it weighs approximately. And I asked him, I said, did you weigh the dog? I don't really care what it weighs. I sprayed in both hands. And I do a lot of keeping myself safe. So the dangerous dog calls are, they're for dogs and people in danger. And like I said, the law enforcement's not equipped or trained or commissioned for those calls. They're not supposed to be. So if Scraps is unwilling and untrained to do the job that they're commissioned to do, what alternatives do you suggest that we can have to protect the community from the dangerous dog calls? There's a lot of them. Specifically trained guide and service dogs, we're targets, and we don't like that. So just to keep myself safe, for example, and my own service dog group, I have 410 members in my group. That's a lot. And probably 80% of those are in Spokane. And I get a lot of people asking me, what do I do about, and I'm, call Scraps. Well, and I get the same feedback. So this isn't on, don't worry. I have a body camera. I have mace. I have a taser. I can put weight on my left leg, so when a dog comes up, she goes behind me, and I can kick it off. I had to do that in a park last week. I work with another organization where we do work with, actually it's Paws on Patrol, the cops group, and that's fun. But when a dog comes up, what are my alternatives? And this is just me. This is only me. So the other feedback I get from other people in town are, it's huge. Lainey over here with another service dog, in a grocery store, we'll get dogs that come up. So if you call Scraps, they don't have the time, they don't have the energy. We had a fairly well publicized event at the fairgrounds a month or so ago. We were attacked by a comfort dog. The dog was snarling, growling this close to us. The officer that came, he was very nice. He said, there's nothing I can do. And I didn't understand at the time that Scraps is the enforcing agency for all the RCWs, all of them. I didn't get that. I do now. Scraps blew it off. They wanted to investigate my dog. I know some of you here have seen her throughout most of her career. She's 4.5. This is how she acts everywhere. She's trained to go behind me. She's trained to be quiet. And I've actually have been retraining her with my trainer because she now steps back when she sees other dogs. It would cost me $40,000 to replace her. I'm not willing to do that. Actually, right in Layla's Law, one of the things Scraps is supposed to enforce, interfering with a guide or service animal, the person in charge of interfering with her is responsible for the cost of retraining. So I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss, and a lot of other people are too. What can we do? They are the only enforcing agency for the laws that are already here. They've been here on the books. There's 2 city ordinances that city council passed. There's nothing. They won't do it. So, you know, and I'm really nice when I deal with people. I really am, I promise. And because I know that you don't get anywhere by being a jerk. So I'm not a jerk. But their own laws, just on regular pet dogs, they have it on bites. They have it on dangerous animals, even on disturbances. And it even says right on here on their RCWs, they are the enforcing agency. And I understand they're understaffed. Okay. What do we do about the dogs being attacked? So, and the death of that dog the other day, that put me over the top. So when the officer came out, they don't carry any pepper spray. They don't carry anything to do anything to protect themselves. And it was a child that got bit while they were on that call. That's inexcusable. And they called 911. The scraps officer said, call 911. 911 said, call the police. That's not their job. That's not their job. You know, what's he going to do? They don't deal with dogs. They're not trained for that. They're trained to interact with people and de-escalate people situations, not dogs. They're not trained in that. So my organization wants to help. We don't know what to do. Mike Fagan and I sat down with Nancy Hill before she retired, and we got a lot of information, but here we are 2 years later, and we don't know what to do.
So the gentleman down at the end of the counter, already shaking his head and waving at you.
Thank you.
Is going to be a contact to be able to get this resolved.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, is there anybody else in the audience like providing any testimony? A second call for anybody wanting to provide testimony, third and final call. So we're going to leave the record open for our next hearing, which will be on the evening of October 22nd here in these chambers at 5:30. So certainly encourage you to come back and share with us your concerns, your comments, as we try and put together the budget for 2020. And so with that, then, that gets us to our last open public forum. And I do have a gentleman signed up, Rodney Nomi.
Good evening. My name is Rodney Nomi. I live at 292 Davis Lake Road, Usk, Washington, and Pomeroy County. I just wanted to come, like my friends, and support Spokane County Raceway. I think it's important for you, the commission, to know how important that facility is to the entire Inland Empire. There's so many racers, as Frank mentioned, from all over the inland Northwest that use that facility. It's one of the best designed facilities in the Northwest. I realize that it's old and some of it's needing of attention, but it is one of the best designed facilities that I've ever raced at. And it's very important to the community. And, you know, as Frank mentioned, there are so many people that come there. And I would urge the commission, if you could, to anybody like Mr. Morris who come and want to, for you to consider their proposals so that we can keep it open. Because if it closes even for a year, reestablishing that is going to be, it's going to take 4 or 5 years. But if we can keep it open, I know there's hundreds of racers. As Dave mentioned, there's 2,000 plus signatures of people who want to support the track. They're not demanding anything, but they're just saying we support this track because we need it. And that's from circle track racers, that's from road course racers, that's from drag racers. I mentioned before, when I met with you before, I came in and spoke with you before, I am the high school bracket sponsor for the last 3 years. And what I do with the high school kids is try to keep them off the streets. I try to teach them. I have my own group that I teach, and 7 of my former students are now
working as mechanics, welders, fabricators, body and fender people. I mean, it's an important avenue that I probably could not do if that track were to close. And I just want you guys to know how much what you do is appreciated and how it extends far beyond Spokane County. I live in Ponderay County. As Frank mentioned, there's people in Montana, Idaho, Oregon. They all come here to race. And without that racetrack, even Canada, we have one of our team members, when we travel and race as a team, Team Spokane, that we go to other tracks and we race, one of our members is actually from Canada, but he's on our team. He's on Team Spokane. He prefers to come and race here, even though there are tracks closer to him. So I just appreciate what you guys do, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. So I do not have anybody else signed up for the open public forum, so I'll ask, is there anybody else who'd like to provide any testimony in the public forum? Second call for anybody wanting to provide testimony, third and final call. So seeing nobody come forward, we'll close the open public forum. That completes all of the items before us for this evening. So it's now 7:13 and we are adjourned. Everybody have a safe trip home. Thank you.